1, 2, 3. All right, there is a massive delay in this, so this could be awkward at some point.
Cue me, dog.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Otherz podcast. I'm your host, Steve and Punesh, back again. Lots of episodes coming in the new year, fast and furious. So we are back with a new one. This week we are discussing freedom, and again, another new guest joining me this week. Of Instagram fame of N.E.R.D.live. It's Punesh Han. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm good as well. It's a pleasure to have you on. As I said on the last podcast, always keen to get new guests on here and have new inputs and new ideas. So really good to have you here, especially with your Instagram page as well, which is becoming more and more popular.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a good journey so far, and there's plenty more content to come. So really excited with how it's going, and lots of unreleased tracks and footage I've got behind the scenes, which I'll be uploading in due course. Good
stuff, and we'll talk a bit more about that at the end as well. Now, for people listening to the podcast, I will do my best in the edit, but I am in a snow-laden Finland. Punesh is in the Sydney area of Australia, I believe. So there's, let's say, a slight delay in our audio and video happening. So if there's any weird awkwardness and silences, then apologies from past Steve, and future Steve will desperately try to correct it as much as possible when I get around to editing this. So let's begin. Were going to talk about freedom. From the list of tracks that I had, this is one that you picked from that list. Any particular reason you were drawn to this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, I think the track is extremely powerful, without question. And I love that the main theme of the record is all about optimism, specifically, living your life without restriction or limitation. And I think more than ever that's becoming super important for all of us. Where individuality has been threatened by the likes of social media, and I think that having a track to remind ourselves that you can achieve whatever you want to achieve, and you are your own mind is a great thing to for us to celebrate. And Pharrell definitely does a great job at promoting that thought in the track, and personally I think it's quite fitting in the time we live in right now, which is why I chose this track.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say, this is one that I've had on the list for a while. I've tried to push it to a few people to do. No one's kind of been really keen on doing it, but for me, this is probably the most underrated Pharrell track out there. It's one of my personal favourites, so I've been really looking forward to doing this one. It's probably my, I'd say, second most watched Pharrell N.E.R.D video, probably after Frontin'. So I really enjoyed getting to watch it again repeatedly the last couple of days as I kind of go through it and make my notes and stuff. And like you say, it's probably timely with what's been happening of the last kind of couple of years as well. It kind of resonates again, I think. Probably resonates most times for a lot of people, but especially at the moment where a lot of us have been for the last couple of years in various different lockdowns and with various different restrictions, and especially you guys over there in Australia, where it's been kind of, I think, harsher than most places. You've really kind of suffered a bit over the last couple of years. So yeah, very timely as well. We'll do the very quick. So released on the 30th of June 2015. Makes me feel really old, as do most of these tracks when I talk about them nowadays. Released as like a standalone single and then also part of the Despicable Me 3 soundtrack. I was very surprised that this never made it onto any actual Pharrell or N.E.R.D type project and was part of just Despicable Me. Yep. I don't know how or why it happened like that, but it did. It didn't perform brilliantly in terms of charts. I think it got to number 1 in Belgium. What else have we got? Number 3 in Greece on a certain chart. Number 3 in Israel. What are we looking at in the US? Number 30 in the US and 36 in the UK. So, average performance in terms of the sales and whatnot of this one. 117 million YouTube views so far. Video directed by Paul Hunter, who, you know, has done God knows how many huge videos over the years, including Frontin, as I just mentioned a moment ago. And this one, the video itself, you know, nominated for the best music video at the 58th Grammy Awards, which would have been in 2016, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the quick facts. So yeah, let's kind of jump into it. So a few other sort of initial things I noticed from kind of, you know, looking into the track and listening to it again. Obviously, the track itself interpolates Uptown Anthem by Naughty by Nature, which is a track I'd kind of completely forgot about, so I had to actually go back and re-listen to and re-watch again recently. Obviously, instantly recognised it. The video, I'm not sure I'd seen that before, but features quite heavily Tupac, who the track is from the Juice soundtrack. So we're talking what year was that? 91, 92, roughly.
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah, 1993. Yeah, definitely. Early days, that stuff, yeah.
Definitely, yeah. And looking at the credits, I noticed this kind of what I really like about a lot of these kind of Pharrell projects is you find not sometimes weird and wonderful names, but names of people that contributed to songs in some kind of way that you don't really expect. And it tends to just be the people just in the studio that are just sat around at the time. So in this case, you've got on backing vocals, you've got Latrell, so obviously who Pharrell has worked with for many, 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 many years and does a lot of backing vocals. You have Fee Hollinger, who works for I Am Other, who would probably have just been in the studio at the time of this being made. You have Rhea, who's obviously one of Pharrell's backing singers on tour and everything else. And then also Cynthia Liu as well, who is of, you know, Cactus Plant Flea Market fame. Also Pharrell's used to be his assistant, his stylist. I think still works as his stylist in some capacity. But yeah, her on a backing track as well. So I think, you know, with these backing vocals and stuff, Pharrell just tends to kind of pull in whoever happens to be sat around him at the time, which is always interesting. And as I'm saying that, I've noticed a red warning. Punesh has put his hands up. There is a failure of some kind.
Yeah.
Something isn't working.
Your computer is not allowing Riverside to record. Please refresh to continue recording. That's what mine says. All
right. So, yes, it's telling me, please have Punesh refresh his page to continue recording. You refresh your page, I'll see you back here in a minute.
I'm back.
Hey, we're back. Hopefully, slightly improved this time. A slightly better delay. And Punesh isn't going to run out of space on his computer. So we should be all right, hopefully. Here we go. So as we were saying, yes. We were talking about backing vocals and whatnot. Also on this track, guitar by friend of the podcast, Brent. I did ask Brent if there was anything particularly interesting about this track, anything that he remembers. His answer was a resounding no. Let me open my messages and see what he said. Where is he? Brent says...
Good old Brent.
Nothing really exciting about this one. It was a really simple guitar part, providing a one-note rhythmic motion to the track. Pharrell had the part and hummed it to me. And I played it.
That sounds exactly like something Brent would say.
Obviously Pharrell's gone in there. Brent has gone in there. I think as we've heard in the past, Pharrell already has all the different parts arranged in his head already, basically. He kind of hums it out in some way or plays it to somebody else, and they then take that and run with it. So a fairly straightforward part for Brent, I think, in this instance.
Yeah.
What else have we got in terms of facts and everything else? I think that's about it I had. So I will now hand it over to you, I guess, and give me your kind of thoughts and feelings and, anything you picked up on in the video and in the track that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's quite catchy, isn't it? And it definitely was a bit of a departure from what we heard from the Go album. So it was nicely timed straight after Go, actually. when his track came out. And yeah, it definitely kind of took more of a serious tone. I'm not saying Girl wasn't serious. I mean, generally it was quite uplifting. So when Freedom came out, it was, yeah, like you said earlier, it was a standalone track, and it was almost like, chapter 2 of Girl, or the next kind of iteration of where the album could have gone. Yeah, but my thoughts are it was super catchy. I loved the intro. The piano it's quite memorable. In fact, I even remember just that tune being stuck in my head, and I'm struggling to sleep at night because it was just like playing in my head over and over again. So yeah, generally just kind of it definitely does have a repetitive kind of nature to it as well, which is probably why it kind of got stuck in my head. But yeah, I think what I loved about the track more so is it built on that positive momentum from the Girl album, and it definitely took it to the next level.
Yeah, it makes me think if maybe it was meant to be part of the Girl project and the Girl album, but maybe didn't kind of quite fit on it.
Yeah.
Because again, yeah, there are parts when you watch the video, there are parts of it that, again, you can interpret freedom, the word freedom and being free in different ways, and there are parts of it where you have the kind of dancers and backing singers all very dressed up, over the top kind of makeup and wigs, and them kind of removing that part way through the video. So there's that kind of freedom for women to not necessarily be beholden to having to wear makeup, having to look amazing all the time, having to do themselves up. And we also see at the very end of the video, two kind of girls taking off their blankets or whatever it is they've got around them, and running naked into wherever it was they were running naked into, and also kind of being free in that way. That's what freedom means to some people. So again, there's that kind of, it makes me think, did it originally fit on the Girl album with those kind of intentions in mind? Because obviously the Girl album is an ode to kind of women and stuff like that. So was it written in part, with that in mind? And again, when the video came around, was it made with, again, that partly in mind?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting you say that, actually, because when I was looking back at some of the videos from the Girl record, it actually had a bit more color, vibrant colors in pretty much all the music videos. Like when you think of Gust of Wind and Marilyn Monroe, like they're all very bright, vibrant kind of scenes. And then when you kind of watch Freedom, it definitely kind of has this tone to it, which definitely kind of gives it a more serious kind of look and feel to the actual music video. Like kind of like a low contrast, sort of washed out kind of tone to the video. And it definitely kind of plays into some of those really powerful scenes that you see. I think they're in the mines. And some of those kind of, they're immensely powerful. I mean, it definitely celebrates diversity really well, which I love. And as you mentioned, it definitely kind of is a continuation of Girl in celebrating that.
Yeah, for sure. And as I kind of watched the video back again earlier and actually making notes, I started to kind of look at the different interpretations that you possibly have of the word freedom there. So we've already talked about one, women potentially being free from these kind of beauty standards, I'm saying in kind of air quotes, that we have today because of social media or whatever it may be. And then, as you mentioned, the diamond mine, so freedom from slavery and oppression and working like that. You had Muhammad Ali in there as well briefly. Yep. So that kind of freedom to kind of be who you are, to kind of stand up for your beliefs and your religion or whatever it may be. What else did I have? You also had I think it's a Sikh guy, holding the urn and throwing the ashes into the air. So again, that's all, to me, that kind of almost represents, like to some people, death is freedom. Especially if you're towards the end of your life and you're suffering in some way. We see that now with people going to, a really dark turn we've taken now, but people ending their own lives because to them that is freedom in some way to get away from the pain that they're in. One other sort of thing I did notice as well that I've got in my notes was he stands on a stage of a kind of school play, and behind him it's depicting what I thought initially was kind of, you know, Native Americans or somebody in a net, and they'd been kind of captured. But it was actually, when I looked at it the other way round, it looked like these kind of explorers that were trapped by a net, and then the kind of, you know, Native American people, or whoever it may be, the natives again in air quotes, actually standing there looking at them. So again, it's that that different interpretation of freedom there.
Yeah.
And seeing that freedom from, you know, those different perspectives as well. So that's what I really liked about the video, just all these different interpretations where you don't necessarily think about it as you watch the video and see the clips kind of flash up. They don't necessarily mean that much. But when you actually go through and look at what each one could be in terms of the word freedom and what that may mean, yeah, there's a lot of meaning there. There's a lot of thought kind of gone into that, and that's why I kind of really, really like the video. And I don't know how much of that came from obviously the director Paul Hunter, and what came from Pharrell, and what came from other people, but I very much imagine, yeah, Pharrell had that kind of idea in his head, which I think he has with his videos as well, from what I've been told.
Yeah.
You know, he goes in there with an idea and a concept that he wants, and he possibly went in there with, you know, this idea of, I want to show freedom in lots of different ways. Here's some examples. Let's build upon that, basically, and that's what we have as we kind of progress through the video.
Yeah, it definitely kind of it reminded me of the Happy video in the way some of the scenes were shot, with when Pharrell was like head on with the camera. So that definitely continued into this music video. But one thing I did want to talk about was, I love the fact that the video really celebrates the beauty behind that, you know, behind that diversity that we see. Like every single scene, and some of those amazing aerial shots, some of those shots of, I think there's the Grand Canyons in there, and, you know, the shots of the birds and everything. Like, it really brings to life the beauty of those specific scenes, as well as the beauty of, you know, different backgrounds of people, and yeah, it's definitely kind of something that, like, I wish more artists did, really, you know. I know Pharrell's on his journey of really kind of embracing this whole kind of this whole idea of gratitude, and I don't know if you've kind of come across some of his masterclass stuff yet, but yeah, this album for me was kind of like the start of that sort of new Pharrell that we had post kind of the 2010 like N.E.R.D Nothing album. It was sort of like a new version of Pharrell. It definitely kind of made him popular in the mainstream as a result as well, so it wasn't a bad thing. But yeah, just from a character development point of view, it's really interesting where he's taken this song.
Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of the N.E.R.D stuff over the years has been kind of socially conscious. It's touched on certain subjects, politics and things like that. But I think this is maybe one of the first ones where it's you know, a real socially conscious first track, in him really literally and metaphorically shouting about it and screaming about it. And again, just touching back on the kind of girl album part as you were talking then, I kind of thought, I think if you took out the shouting part, the track may well have fit on the girl album, but I think I was going to say it's jarring as he kind of shouts that. It is to a certain extent, but I think that's where it doesn't, you know, fit into another project. It may fit into maybe an N.E.R.D type project, but certainly not a girl project with that part of the track on it. It's just too much of a difference. And also, just touching on your point about the video, I've got a couple of notes about that as well, about the way some of it was shot. Beautifully shot. Some really nice, you know, kind of cinematography almost in there as well. Although I did notice a few parts in there, they do kind of look like stock footage. And there's nothing wrong with using stock footage in a TV show, a movie, a music video or whatever. There are certain parts where I sort of wonder, like, did they actually shoot that, or have they borrowed that from elsewhere? So a lot of the nature stuff, for example, like the the whale jumping, the cheetah and the antelope, those kinds of things, they look very stock footage-esque. But then at the same time, the footage of kind of the canyon and stuff, I think that comes partly from Paul Hunter, but also from Apple, who are involved in this project as well, to a certain extent.
Yes.
Now, something I forgot to mention earlier is this track was the first track used to launch Beats One on Apple Music. And it was used in the promotion of it, and it was Zane Lowe's first track that he played on there and stuff. But we saw around that time Apple heavily investing in music, in artists, in projects, and in videos. They paid Drake a shed ton of money to make some videos for him, basically to have exclusive rights to albums and stuff like that initially. And some of those shots I see very much remind me of a lot of stuff Apple was working on at the time for its own kind of promotional material. But also, if you have an Apple TV, for example, the screensavers that you see that are made by lots of different artists and photographers around the world, these kind of scenes where they fly over cityscapes and deserts and the newer ones, Grand Canyon and stuff as well. Some of the shots very much reminded me of a lot of that work as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if Apple were involved in some way or utilized in some way to, provide some footage or help get certain footage as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point, actually. Apple's quite polished, isn't it, as a company? Everything it does is aesthetically beautiful. So
and I think if you don't know much about Apple, if you're a general consumer, you maybe don't realize that they are so involved behind the scenes with stuff like this. So, as an example, as I just mentioned, they invested a lot of money in Drake a few years back. Now, Hotline Bling the video was paid for by Apple. They produced most of it. I think they hired the team around it.
Yep.
And also that album that it was on, I can't remember the name of the album. But by doing that, they kind of secured, I think, the initial exclusive rights to have it on Apple Music for whatever it was, the first week or 2 weeks or something. And they do that with a lot of artists. They're involved in a lot of projects that people don't really realise. And obviously, Pharrell has a relationship with Apple anyway. He's been working with them for a number of years. And I Am Other do a lot of work with Apple as well. Brent has worked with Apple.
Yep.
All of that kind of comes from that overall kind of relationship. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they were involved, especially because it was being used to launch Beats One as well.
Yeah.
And they would have not needed the rights to have that, but I think if they sweeten the deal in some way, we'll help produce a video. If you don't release the track elsewhere, we get to use it first. Type agreement, maybe.
Yeah, sounds about right. It's turned out pretty well for Pharrell and Apple, I guess, with the podcast still kind of going strong as well. I know there's like a few now, but yeah, definitely kind of...
That's an Apple Podcast exclusive as well, isn't it? I think when it first launches, it comes out a few days now on that or on Apple Music or something first, yeah.
Yeah, Other Tone you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Which I dip in and out of. I don't know if you listen to all of it. It depends on the guest when I tend to listen to it, because unfortunately, as much as I love Pharrell, my love for Pharrell and the team is, obviously well known. I'm making a podcast about them, but... His interviews and his involvement in a lot of these projects is he's a businessman now. He's not just a music producer, the way I look at it. So his answers, his questions and his answers to things he is asked are generally quite safe, I would say. They're almost kind of political to a certain extent, although very different on Drink Champs. I'm drunk now. Drink Champs. Once you get a few drinks down him, he loosens up a little bit, it seems.
Yeah.
But yeah, with his podcast, I find it a lot of the times a bit samey. So again, it will very much depend on the guest as to whether I listen to it.
Yeah, I think my favourite one was actually when they had Justin Timberlake on the podcast, and Chad and Fam was on it as well, and just kind of talking about the issues behind the record labels as to why Pharrell can work with Justin, and I found that really interesting.
Exactly. As a fan, that's the kind of thing I want to hear. Not necessarily like salacious stuff, but just how things happen in the background. How did you come up with that idea? How did you mix that record? How did you produce that thing? What were the challenges? What did you like? Yep. I'm not so much a fan of the kind of celebrity interview where they kind of sit there and just gush over each other and tell each other how amazing they all are, which I find a lot of them kind of can be. Which, if you're making a podcast that is for the masses, which it is, because obviously it's on Apple Music and Apple Podcasts, then fair enough. But I'm kind of more interested in a slightly different aspects.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's funny you said the Pharrell thing, because now that you said it, I can't get it out of my mind. Like, Pharrell definitely plays it safe on podcasts, and actually, I think last week I was watching the Rick Rubin interview that's on YouTube. I think it's like an hour long, and it literally is just them two gushing at each other in terms of some of the
What
songs.
surprised me in that interview is he does have that kind of 5 or 10 minutes where he talks about blurred lines and gets quite sort of angry and annoyed and animated about that, because obviously that was in the kind of midst of the legal action, or maybe just after the legal action had kind of found in favour of the Marvin Gaye family. And he was, slightly, let's say, peeved about that, I think, having to pay out $17 million or whatever the amount was. So he gets kind of quite animated about that, which very much surprised me about that interview. But then, the rest of it is just them kind of telling each other how amazing they both are, which, is nice and all, but not the sort of interview I'm really sort of interested in. And that's why nowadays I think a lot of Pharrell interviews I tend to just skip over. I don't tend to watch them. I know if he says something potentially interesting or something I may enjoy, I will get told that by other people, or it will turn up in one of the Telegram groups I'm in, or one of the websites that I happen to go to get information and news. And then I'll go and watch it maybe. But generally now it's like I don't rush out to watch a new Pharrell interview, because a lot of the time there's not a lot of new stuff being said. Yeah,
as you said, it's he understands that it is a business, and the people that we are watching or listening to that content are probably mainstream people anyway. Like, I know you're part of the subculture, so the detail, well, for us is really, really important. But for people that come across these interviews, that's exactly what they want to hear. They want to hear Rick and Pharrell gushing over each other, and that's, I guess, it'll kind of make their day ultimately. But the detail behind the scenes is it's definitely kind of few and far between in Pharrell interviews for sure.
The last bit of my notes I had, just to round off some of the video stuff. This was the all denim Pharrell phase that he had with his flat cap. I say flat cap, I think it's like a Chanel hat or something, which are a bit more expensive than a flat cap. If you're not English British, you probably don't know what we're referring to. Google it, you'll see. And I initially noted down, there's no product placement or anything in this kind of video in terms of what he's wearing. But then going back and watching it again, there is blatant product placement in this. So he's got the Adidas jeans that he was wearing at the time, the customised pair, which fucking awful, horrible jeans with that Adidas logo on his ass, basically. Looks bizarre. Never a fan of those. He's got the Chanel.
I didn't even notice it.
No, they're in a couple of videos. I think Gust of Wind, he wears them. And there's maybe another from around that kind of era. He's wearing them. And not that I'm sat there looking at Pharrell's ass, obviously, but that Adidas logo is so big and red, it's just like, it looks bizarre. So not a fan of those. The Chanel belt, the understated Chanel belt he has on there. And then I'm assuming his kind of black shoes are some, horribly expensive pair from some brand that I'll never be able to afford. And like I say, his hat, I think, was like Chanel as well. I think I saw something about it around the time. So again, a hat that I'd never be able to afford, but probably wouldn't want to wear anyway. And then, a couple of denim shirts as well. Customized. I do like the denim shirt he's wearing, the kind of denim undershirt, which has the kind of hold on to me stitched into the back. which looks quite cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, no BBC, no human made, none of that kind of stuff in this video. A slightly more kind of grown up looking, as you mentioned earlier. It's, I think, part of that transitioning phase of Pharrell into his next stage of life, let's say.
Yeah, a man of wisdom.
Yes. Anything else from yourself on the video or the track?
Not particularly. I think just kind of everything what I said earlier in terms of it was fitting around the time that it came out, but actually like things have gotten a lot worse in the world, and when you listen to it again, it still is quite relevant, and that's really important, because the world hasn't really gotten better. Really, it's kind of gotten worse, with the state of politics, with obviously COVID and everything like that, and we're definitely kind of seeing some countries go down this far right movement element at the moment, and it hasn't changed. It's gotten worse, really. So it definitely feels quite relevant for me at the moment. But yeah, just kind of like expression of thought is really interesting for me, and I really support people having their own positive. Well, I think it's really important to be positive. It's really important to do good in this world, and the song supports it. So amongst all the kind of pain that we're suffering in the world today, it's quite nice and quite refreshing to have that kind of message out there, which is kind of again why I love the track so much, and as you said, why you love the track so much as well. I think we could definitely kind of have more of that kind of stuff, the airwaves, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of it for me. Yeah.
Cool. One last point I had around some of the lyrics, because it was buried amongst all my other notes. Let me just move over to another screen and pull up the lyrics so I don't actually completely misquote it. The third verse on there I really, really like. All the verses are kind of quite short and simple, but on verse 3, you have the first part of it where there's a really good kind of wordplay and kind of meaning behind it. So that, to me, it's like it's a mixture of science and religion in one, and obviously those two things are normally very opposed to each other. If you're an extremely scientific person, you're not necessarily religious, let's say, and vice versa. It can be if you are the extreme of one or the other. But I like in this, I'll read the first kind of couple of lines. We are from heat, the electric one, does it shock you to see he left us the sun? Says, that we are from heat, so that's kind of can refer to, the Big Bang, where we all kind of originally come from. But then it talks about, like, he left us the sun, so it's, it's referring to God in that instance. And then what I also like is, the electric one, again, referring to both. It could be the Big Bang, it could be an interpretation of God. But then in the next line, I like the play on the word shock. So he goes from electric to shock, which I quite like. It's quite simplistic but nice.
Yep.
And then the last kind of few lines of the verse, I am by no means a fan. I'm covered in tattoos, but I am by no means a fan of people getting song lyrics tattooed on themselves, because I generally think they're a bit cheesy, they don't always look that good, etc, etc. If I were, I think, to get any song lyric tattooed on me in some shape or form, it would be the last few lines from the third verse of this song. And again, I'll read it out. I won't sing it, obviously.
Please do.
So it goes, no, please don't. Atoms in the air, organisms in the sea, the sun and yes man are made of the same things. Now, again, quite a sort of simplistic lyric, but to me, that, like, it defines, like, the everything and the nothingness of life. And by that, I mean, it's what we're all made of. It's why we're here. It's why we are chatting by the wonders of technology from other sides of the planet, and being able to kind of do this. But at the same time, in terms of the nothingness, it's like, yes, we are made from the same things as everything else around us, carbon atoms and whatever else it may be. And that's the same as what every other planet is made from, what the sun is made from. So in the grand scheme of things, we're nothing, and we are just
nothing and one and the same.
A blip in time, and just, yes, all in one. So I really, really like that lyric. That's kind of what it means to me. And being a non-religious person, an atheist, the religious part of that verse doesn't really mean much to me, but I see what it means to Pharrell, because obviously religion is very important to him, but he is also a believer of and a lover of science as well. So it's always really interesting to see in his songs, his lyrics, and his projects, how he kind of balances those two things, which sometimes can clash against each other if you are, really, what's the word I'm looking for? If you're really kind of, if you're really heavily religious or really heavily into, the kind of scientific view. So it's always interesting to me to see how that balances out as well in terms of what he writes and what he produces.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, are you sure you don't want to get that tattooed somewhere on you? I think we started something here.
I don't know. I'm still debating it. Like I say, I'm not a fan of lyric tattoos, but if I were to get one, it probably would be that. And if somebody out there can come up with like an amazing design of some kind and a place on me where it wouldn't look slightly ridiculous, then as someone who is already covered in tattoos, I'm open to to ideas.
Yeah, what's one more tattoo? Come on.
So anyone out there that's a tattoo designer, exactly, what's one more? Yeah, there's a space somewhere on me, I'm sure. But if anyone out there is an artist or a tattooist or knows of one, and you want to present something and share it my way, then by all means I'll have a look and I'll consider it. All right, I think that's everything for that track. Let's get into some news, and then we can talk about ourselves for a little while as well, which is always good. So only a few bits of news recently. Well, there's probably loads, but a few bits that I picked out. A new BBC store in Hong Kong opened earlier this week.
Sure.
And for reference, we are recording this on Thursday, the 6th of January, because this episode might not go out for another week or so, because there might be a little surprise in between somewhere. But yeah, a new BBC store in Hong Kong opened up. Again, interesting to see what they're doing with the BBC brand. I know Pharrell probably isn't particularly involved in this, probably doesn't particularly care either way either, but he probably has to sign it off. So it was interesting to see this open, and interesting to see it open in the Hong Kong market as well, because we've already got the Japanese store out there, which ships across Asia. So yeah, a new store. It looks great. Uses the kind of star-filled design kind of on all the walls and on a lot of the they've got like one of these kind of little photo booths there, which is all the Starfield design, which is obviously one of my favourite patterns BBC have ever done.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
So I love anything with that on it.
Yeah.
So it's looking really good.
Yeah. Is it a pop-up store or is it a permanent store?
I believe it's permanent, I think.
Okay. Yeah. It's you don't really hear about BBC stores opening up. So this Hong Kong one's definitely kind of interesting news at the moment, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. So the last one before this was the Miami store, which was originally a pop-up, then it became permanent, then it moved locations. Now I think it's permanent at that new location, which is nearby to where it was previously. So yeah, interesting to kind of see this, interesting to see what it would do out there, and whether it will sort of stay open or not, basically. Hopefully it does.
Yeah.
What else have we got? Some new bits that I've copped recently. The BBC astronaut NMDs came out. I managed to grab a pair of those. They're looking good. An Adidas Human Race hoodie for Christmas. So thank you to the other half for that one. And also, finally, my Star Trek hoodie and T-shirt arrived this week, about 2 months after ordering them or something ridiculous. I don't know if you've managed to kind of, or you're even interested in this stuff, but whether you've managed to get any of this stuff. But yeah, so I got mine yesterday.
Yep.
I'm quite disappointed, I have to say. So I'm wearing right now the Star Trek Hidden hoodie from a few months back, which to me is a great fit. Now I'm a fat ass. I wear like an XL. I tend to buy a 2XL because I like my hoodies, a bit looser, a bit baggier, a bit more comfy. So this is a 2XL, and this is kind of quite baggy on me. It fits really, really nicely. It's how I want a hoodie to fit. So I ordered the new Star Trek stuff, which I think was the second Star Trek drop. I didn't bother getting anything from the first drop. I ordered a 2XL there, again, thinking they come from exactly the same manufacturer, exactly the same factory in Florida. Hey, future Steve here. After recording this, I actually confirmed with somebody from Star Trek that they don't in fact, or haven't in fact, manufactured the standard Star Trek and the hidden Star Trek collaboration in the same place. They just happen to ship from a very similar facility in Florida. So bear that in mind as you listen to me rant for the next few minutes. Now back to Past Steve. Thinking they would be the same fit, the same size. I was going to wear the hoodie for this recording because I only got it yesterday. I put it on, I squeezed into it, I pulled it down, and I was like, I can't wear this, I can't. Yeah. It's a 2XL. It fits like a large.
Oh, no.
If that. Yeah. The t-shirt I didn't even try on, I just hung it up and left it. Oh. So that's really annoying. And I love the design of the hoodie with the embroidered kind of yellow Star Trek logo on the chest. Then obviously the kind of screen printing on the back with the kind of Star Trek thing. Really love the design. But yeah.
See, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll give you my 2 cents. So I have that hoodie, the one you're wearing, the Star Trek hidden one. I've got that, and I also got the t-shirt as well in black. And what I noticed between the hidden stuff and the Star Trek stuff is the quality of the hidden stuff is so much better than the Star Trek stuff. So that made me realize that, well, I thought that they were actually from 2 separate manufacturers, because the hidden stuff is all top quality stuff, whereas the Star Trek stuff I think isn't as good quality as the hidden stuff. But for me, the Star Trek stuff actually fits me better than the hidden stuff. So I have that hoodie. Yeah, I've got the hoodie in small. I'm like 5'5". I'm tiny. I have the hoodie in small, and it's too baggy for me. So I think I've worn it a couple of times, just going to get a coffee in the mornings. But yeah, I'm kind of like now realizing that I don't fit in it, and I don't really know what to do with it. But the t-shirt fits me. The black t-shirt fits me. So yeah, okay. You're right. It is all over the place. But no, I copped the first Star Trek drop and the hidden stuff, and I also have a cap and a tee on order from Star Trek, and it's been like 2 months now. I actually sent them an email the other day, being like, "Hey,
that's what I had to do."
Yeah, but nothing just yet.
Yeah, it's strange. It's annoying. And when the first Star Trek release dropped, I saw a lot of comments from a lot of people saying, the t-shirts are really thin, they're really flimsy, they weren't fans and all that. So I kind of avoided that first drop. But for the second drop, I like some of the designs. And also, I've got to say, I have a walk-in closet next to my office here. It's full of literally hundreds of BBC pieces. I don't wear 99% of it anyway. So even if I buy it, it gets added to the collection as part of, the kind of Star Trek history or whatever, then I'm kind of okay with that. But when it turned up, I really liked it, the design of it so much. I was really looking forward to actually wearing it. So I'm, really disappointed it doesn't fit. And like I said, the t-shirt, the quality wasn't too bad. On this second drop, from what I saw, it wasn't as thin as I was expecting from what people had said regarding the first drop.
Yeah.
The hoodie, definitely a very different material to this hidden one. This is kind of thinner material, but it seems more, I don't know how to explain it.
It's like a higher thread
There's more
count.
to it. Yeah, something like that, yeah. You can kind of feel the kind of quality in it. It won't wear quite as well, as badly. Whereas the Star Trek one, it is quite heavyweight, it is quite thick, but you can kind of feel it's sort of fluffy on the inside, and it feels like it will probably wear out a bit quicker.
Yeah.
But it's not bad by any means. I've paid a lot more for clothing from other brands that are of less quality.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just slightly annoying on the the sizing as well. And I think I may have mentioned this on the last podcast. I can't recall now. But I got a few bits from BBC EU a couple of months back when I popped back to London for a weekend, from the new ice cream range they're doing. And like the fit of those, again, just weird, ridiculous. Again, a 2XL hoodie, quite tight in certain places, really baggy in some parts, really tight in other parts. Didn't seem quite right. And then I bought, what I loved was the Cones and Bones crew neck they did. And they had the kind of blue version, the black version. I think I got a black version, because black goes with anything, basically. And again, the arms, the top part of it, fits great. But then you pull it down, the length of it like reaches my belly button.
Oh no.
And that's about it. It's really bizarre. It's like really short.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare. Yeah.
And it's like, it's a 2XL, which you think I normally complain that, an XL size or a 2XL, they make them for like really tall people. So they're normally really, really long. Like the arms are really long, the length is really long. This just seems to be like really short. I don't know. The sizing is bizarre, and I feel like a real old person complaining about the size of clothing.
Yeah.
Because I know as a kind of teenager and somebody in my early teens, I'd be like, I know what size I am. I buy it, and that's my size. And I don't understand people that complain about that stuff. But now as I get older and I spend more money on clothes,
a lot of money,
and I buy quite expensive stuff, it's just bizarre how it can just vary so much. How this hoodie here can be slightly oversized and baggy, whereas something else that's meant to be exactly the same runs about 3 sizes smaller.
Yeah,
weird.
That's not. Yeah, I think hoodies in general just seem to be a little bit like, if you're gonna buy an XL in a tee, don't get an XL in a hoodie. Like, yeah, it's just never consistent at the moment, is it? But you live and you learn.
Yes, exactly. The only problem I have is being out here in Finland is like, I don't get to try any of this stuff on. It's not like I can, pop to the local, my local BBC store and go, okay, this season, what is the sizing like? Try it on. Okay, I know I'm an XL this time, or I know I need to size up or size down. So you got to buy it blind. Yeah. And then, in theory, I could be a person that gets it, goes, oh, it doesn't fit, and sends it back, but I just can't be bothered. I'm just too lazy.
Oh no, you're wasting money as well.
I know, so I can't really complain. Yeah. I shouldn't complain, I should say. The one thing maybe, and this has been pointed out to me before, is like, maybe start doing some exercise again and actually fit back into these clothes,
Oh yeah. I don't know how long that would take that's not an instant fix though, is it? That's the
No, exactly, yeah. That's a long-term thing.
Yeah.
And I just remembered also, very briefly, speaking about BBC EU, again, today is the 6th of January. There is a new ice cream drop happening today in store and on the website. I think it's 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. UK time, which is right about now as we record it. But I haven't looked yet, so I don't know what's in that drop. But if you are liking the new ice cream stuff, cough, cough, not the sizing, cough, cough, go and check that out, see if there's anything there that you like. I think that's all the notes I had. Before it gets past your bedtime, because you are in Sydney, about 100 hours ahead of me, let's talk about us for a bit, or let's talk about you for a bit.
Sure.
Let's talk about N.E.R.D.live and what you've been doing over there.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So I've always kind of been into capturing videos and audio files from like a young age. I'm 35 now. I think I kind of got into it when I was like 15 or 14 or 15 or whatever. And I even have like these really weird recordings of like N.E.R.D playing Thrasher for the first time in Paris, and these really horrible mobile phone clips that just sound horrible. And for some reason, I just kept all of it. And I have a treasure trove of like live footage, and I even used to kind of like capture. So I used to record like live performances on the VHS, and like like how they did like All Eyes on N.E.R.D on MTV2 and all that kind of stuff. I recorded all of it, and I had like a capture device on my computer, so I used to transfer it digitally. So just over the years, I just kind of like managed to accumulate quite a lot of that stuff. And even from the early days, like from the original N.E.R.D site and the Star Trek site, like there were live videos of them playing that Shepherd's Bush Empire, which I kind of got, and some of the videos of like Pharrell talking about Stereolab and Chad doing a tour of his house, and I think introducing the audience to his ex-wife. I mean, ex-wife now, I guess, but and his kid as well. So like all that kind of stuff I have, and I was like, do you know what? It's just going to sit on a hard drive forever, or I can do something with it. So I just decided to kind of like put it all, not all of it, but a lot of it on that page at the moment. And I'm definitely kind of getting a lot of DMs, a lot of likes and comments on this stuff. And there's been a few people who are kind of got annoyed that I posted a lot of early stuff when I first started it, and they were like, "Oh, is this going to be another page where you're just going to ignore like the 2010s?" And I'm like, "No, dude, chill. We've got all the time in the world. Don't worry, it's coming." But people like to kind of complain. So yeah, no, I'm kind of really enjoying it and really happy that kind of Brent's following the page. I mean, Eric, Twig, Philip, like they're all kind of engaging with the page, which is like really nice actually, because I know they're all part of the family. But yeah, really excited with where it's going. It's only been like 3-4 months or so. So yeah, we'll see where it goes.
No, that's cool. Because I saw one of your early posts got shared by somebody, by a mutual follower of ours. I can't remember who, and it was a show that I think I was at. So I was like, oh, well, obviously I remember that. So went in there, had a look, and I think you only had a few posts up at that time.
Yeah.
And I remember. I think I commented or something like, oh, I was there, and we maybe shared a couple of comments backwards and forwards. I think you were probably there as well. One of the London shows.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was great to kind of see some of that footage again, and kind of have those kind of memories. Because back then, I think I used to take a digital camera. I used to borrow a friend's digital camera to the show, so I've got like hundreds of photos back, printed off at my mum's house and stuff, and probably on my computer here as well, buried somewhere. But not many videos, because obviously those early 2000s ones, it was before we really had any decent kind of cameras in our phones and stuff, especially for video. So it was mainly like a digital camera with a zoom on it, standing kind of at the front or halfway back, taking pictures sort of through the crowd and stuff. So it's really great to actually be able to find some of those videos and relive some of those gigs, and a lot of them, because there's been so many over the years, I've just kind of forgotten about. People always sort of say to me like, oh, do you remember this show? And I'm like, no, I don't know if I was there. I assume I was, because it's a London show, and for a certain time period until I moved out to Australia in roughly 2010ish, whenever it was, I'd been to every London show they'd done. So I most likely was at a show if somebody brings it up and it was in London, but I just have no kind of recollection. My memory's awful these days anyway, and with the amount of shows, a lot of them just kind of blur into one.
Yeah.
So it's really great to kind of get those memories and see those videos. And even recently, I started going through a lot of my old photos I've got, and started to find lots from those old shows, and was like, oh shit, there was a show that year and I was there, and oh, that happened. And there's a few videos I've found here and there, really bad quality ones where you can barely even make out what the track is because the audio is just so bad. But there are some where I'm like, oh shit, I've seen him do that song, or they did that, and so it's really good to kind of go through that. And I was going to say to you as well, at some point I will dig through all of the archives and see if I can find anything that's semi-decent, or decent enough quality where you can at least make out what the track is, and send them over to you, and then if you want to share them you can as well.
No, that would be awesome. I absolutely would would appreciate that. And actually, just it's really interesting you say it's hard to remember some of those moments from the early days. And actually, the Hammersmith Apollo gig that was on MTV, and I posted a few clips on that where Justin and Dizzy Rascal and everyone came out and whatever. That wasn't the first time Justin Timberlake had come out at an N.E.R.D show. And people don't know that Justin had come out early on. I think it was at the Brixton show, the early Brixton shows, or maybe even the Astoria shows. And I actually have video clips of Justin coming out for those shows in my archive as well. So like that's going to go up as well. There's like Killer Keller. Do you remember when he used to come on?
Yeah, I saw him there with him. Yep.
Yeah, Killer Keller was there. We had like Spy Mob always did a set before N.E.R.D, and hey, even the script used to support N.E.R.D. And obviously the script got absolutely massive. So there's so much that happened during these shows, and there's so much footage behind the scenes that like I am really excited to kind of put up. But I think the Shepherd's Bush, the first the first Shepherd's Bush show, I think it was their first official show, 1st of July 2002. I'm never going to forget that
I've
date.
got the poster just over my shoulder on the wall over there. Yep.
Love it. Yeah, that was you had Lee Harvey, you had Khalees. It was it was a pretty special time. And I will say one thing about that show, which is because N.E.R.D weren't that big at the time, you didn't really get like the screaming fans, the ones who are shouting Pharrell every 2 seconds and elbowing you in the face just to get to the front. Like, you didn't have any of that. It was spacious. It was a vibe. I was definitely around people that were just smoking weed. It was it was a good time. And I think ultimately around the sort of like 2010s, I kind of got a little bit fed up of the shouting, the screaming, and the groupies, I guess. And I kind of fell out of love with going to N.E.R.D shows because it got aggressive. Like, some of these girls would do anything to get to the front, and
oh yes, I've witnessed it myself. Yeah, and I think I might have mentioned it on the podcast before, but yeah, back in the early days when there was only really In Search of out, and then you had to be like a real hip hop fan to know who the Neptunes were, who Pharrell was. So you would go to an N.E.R.D gig and you would get such a wide spectrum of people in the audience. You would get the younger people that were into hip hop, that knew the kind of the club tracks and stuff. But then you would also bump into people in their sort of 50s and 60s almost that had just heard the In Search of album and loved classic rock and roll and jazz and stuff like that was obviously used in the album. So yeah, you had that really wide range of people, and then as you got into kind of the mid 2000s, 2006, around that sort of time, it gradually changed, and we got to that point in the mid 2000s where it was probably 75% screaming teenage girls, which would get, like you say, a bit tiresome when you would go and watch those shows, because any break in the audio whatsoever, and it would just be a cacophony of young girls just screaming at Pharrell and stuff, and it was just like, and as a young man who's there to enjoy the music and loves the albums and stuff, it's just like, oh god,
Yeah, it's a bit too much, isn't it? We had a crew actually, like an N.E.R.D crew that used to go and queue up at 9 a.m. for every show, and pretty much for most of the early shows, myself and my sister were always number 1 and number 2 in the queue, and it was always the same people as well, like over the years, and we kind of got quite matey with all of them, and then we'd have like meetups and stuff, and a lot of them were into Bape and BBC at the time as well, and definitely kind of made some friendships from those early days.
I feel that over the years we probably have crossed paths at some point without knowing, and here we are. I'm living in Finland. You're obviously from the UK originally as well, but you now live in Australia, where I kind of lived at one point as well. And here we are kind of crossing paths again, kind of all these years later, because I was very similar. I'd travel up from Poole, like normally the day of the gig or the day before, and I'd always get a hotel like as close to the venue as possible. So I'd sort of stay at the hotel, go check in, basically find the nearest pub, go for a pint, and then go straight over to the venue, and again queue outside and always be pretty near the front, probably in the first, when I first started going, probably in the first 10, 20 people. As I got older and wanted to queue less and less and wasn't interested in queuing, I'd go in right at the end. But at the start, in the early days, I was probably down the front somewhere with you and probably bumped into you at some point as well. I imagine.
I'm going to look back at my photos because I've definitely got a lot of photos from us queuing up at the early days with the crew and stuff. So you never know, you might be in one of my photos.
Yeah, and like I say, I've got hundreds as well. Unfortunately, and stupidly, they're all taken on a digital camera. But what I used to do is like not store them on a hard drive because it was a friend's digital camera. Is I would kind of take them or transfer them to a USB stick or whatever, go and get them printed off, kind of Photoshop at Boots or whatever in the UK, and then kind of delete all the digital copies and just have like the physical copies. So there's thousands probably in my mum's loft back in the UK, but I don't have a lot of the original digital ones. So what I now need to do at some point in the future is get all of those physical copies, ship them to here in Finland, and then like redigitize them all.
Oh yeah, and you'll lose a lot.
And then start going through them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be a mission, but maybe one that's worthwhile, worth doing. But at some point in the near future, I will also go through what I have on my various hard drives and in my photos album and stuff like that, and see what I can dig out. And if I find anything good, like I say, I'll send it over to you, and I'll try and keep an eye out for your face as well. 'Cause, like I say, we've probably seen each other. We've probably been in the same crowds together, and yeah.
It's also good to reminisce as well, isn't it? Like when you look back and. One of the things I always notice in all these photos is there is not a mobile phone in sight. There is not because nowadays you look at like videos on YouTube and everybody's just got their phone up. Like,
yeah.
I know I sound like an old man now, but back in those days, back in the day, it was like you could only focus on what was in front of you, and that was a beautiful thing. And I was actually thinking about it earlier today, before I came on this podcast, that. Am I ever going to get back into live music again? Like, am I ever going to feel the same attachment to live music that I used to feel? And all the experiences that we both have had going to these shows from the early days. Now, I don't think it's the same anymore. And I almost feel like a little bit gutted for the people that are going to live shows, because you literally have so many phones in front of you that you just end up looking at the show on somebody else's phone. It's really sad.
And it's funny because I'm kind of guilty of that as well. Like when I go to a live show, not that I've been to one for quite a while, but when I do go to one, I always kind of think, I want to be able to remember it. I want to be able to kind of look back at this show and list, be able to say like, oh, I saw that song live, like maybe to my kid when he's a bit older, and go, here's a video of it. So I find myself when certain songs come on with certain artists, if it's a really big one or one that I really like, I'm straight to my phone, record it. Try and save that memory somewhere, because it won't last that long in my own head. So get it on the phone quickly.
Yeah.
And then what I find is, as with most people, you never end up looking back at these things. They just sit there in your Photos app or on your phone or wherever, just forever. And occasionally I do try and go back. I do kind of categorize everything into gigs, and I label everything and date everything. So there are times when I do kind of scroll back through them, but. There are times when it's funny, so there are times when I wish I hadn't been using my phone to record it, but then there's a lot of times where, I've seen Kanye like 6 or 7 times live. I went to like his first 2 live UK shows. I wish I'd had a really good, camera phone then to record some of that, because it was amazing.
Yeah.
Like this was, Kanye's first show. Nobody wanted to go with me, so I went like by myself basically. None of my friends, even those that are into hip hop, they're just like, oh, who? And at the time, he only had Slow Jams out.
Yeah.
And I think the album just had dropped, but Slow Jams was only what people really knew.
Yeah.
So nobody really wanted to go. Nobody was really into him. And I wish I'd recorded some of that. I went to Eminem's first ever UK gig in London, which might have been Brixton.
Yeah.
He brought out Dr. Dre halfway through.
Oh,
and Dr. Dre did like 3 songs, I think.
Yeah.
So again, I wish I'd been able to like record some of that, because that's probably not likely. Well, they will perform again at some point together, and they do bring each other out for these kind of big festival events and really big kind of shows. you're never going to be in like a small, intimate kind of venue like Brixton Academy or wherever it might have been. With what's the capacity there?
Brixton. I think Brixton was around 3,000. I think it was. Unless you're talking about like Astoria or LA2, like those are the ones that were in the hundreds.
They're really small,
Yeah.
I think it would have been Brixton Academy.
Yeah.
But even to me, like with a capacity of that much, it's still what I would consider like a more kind of intimate gig. It's a smaller scale. It's not 100%. An arena. It's not it's not Wembley or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't think none of us are ever going to go see Eminem in one of those venues again, and then have Dr. Dre come out halfway through, And there's been a lot of stuff like that over the years where I've gone to see people. It's been their first gig in the UK or first gig wherever, and then they've just blown up and taken off. And I wish I'd been able to kind of capture some of that early stuff. But then, like you say, it's I'm also glad I was kind of I hate to say it like this, but enjoying it in the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds very cheesy, but
Yeah, but it's really important. But Steve, you sound like a trendsetter. You've been to all these shows and go to more. You never know what might happen. Well, not that live shows are happening at the moment, but when they do come back.
But that was the great thing about like the UK back then in the early 2000s. It was like if you were just becoming like a big artist, or you wanted to you were like a US artist and you wanted to break Europe. Yeah, and obviously we view it from a different perspective. We view it as like a UK artist always trying to break America, But it works the other way around. US artists need to kind of break Europe a lot of the time. Well, they used to when you used to have to actually have record sales. So they would always come to London, And like I say, I'm trying to think of some of the others I've been to. I can't remember all of them, but the big ones to me, Eminem's first ever UK show, and Kanye's first one as well. And being there and seeing them, it was just amazing. I don't remember who I went to the Eminem one with, but like I say, Kanye, like nobody was interested. I think I used to always buy 2 tickets because I would normally always have a friend come with me, whether that was an N.E.R.D gig or somebody else. And I remember buying 2 Kanye tickets. Nobody wanted to come, and even like one friend who would normally come, her response was, "Oh, Kanye, is that the guy that's got that song where it sounds like a chipmunk on the chorus?" And I was just like, "Oh my god," because obviously it's got the sample in the chorus of Slow Jams sped up.
Yeah.
And my head in my hands, just in despair. And I ended up going. I think I ended up selling the ticket outside the gig to a tout or something.
Yeah.
And just getting half my money back or something, and then just queuing up and going in by myself.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think who was supporting. I think he might have had John Legend, Samantha Ronson came out.
Wow.
The violinist that was in a lot of his tracks back then, is it Miri Ben-Ari or something? The Israeli woman who did a lot of his kind of violin production and stuff. She came on and did some stuff. And there was somebody else as well. It was kind of like a little kind of lineup before he came out, a little concert in itself. Of kind of artists that he was into at the time, or that he was working with, or the up and coming, like I say, like John Legend. And obviously Samantha Ronson was kind of popular back then, being the sister of Mark, and I think the girlfriend of Lindsay Lohan at the time. So she was kind of blowing up as well.
Of course, yeah.
So
and that was kind of around the time where Amy Winehouse would have been touring, and she played a lot of gigs at Brixton at the time. I never got to actually. The same thing happened to me. Well, I was the one that turned down the offer to go to the Amy Winehouse gig that my sister had tickets for, and obviously now I regret that, and I'm gonna regret it for the rest of my life, because obviously of what happened. But I think there are two artists that I think I never ever got to see, which I'm really annoyed about. Which was Amy was one of them. Michael Jackson was the other. Michael Jackson, This Is It.
I lived in Australia. Yeah, I lived in Australia at that time. I had tickets, and I was literally going to fly back from Perth to London for a weekend, just for 3 days.
Yeah,
the jet lag would have been horrific at both ends. I probably would have had some kind of breakdown at some point during or after. But yeah, I had the tickets as well. I was going to do that. That's, Michael's probably my main one. I was lucky enough. I saw Prince before he died. I saw James Brown just before he died.
Yeah.
I've got tickets for Elton John.
Okay, cool.
It's already been postponed 3 times because of COVID and because of his poor health that he's generally in these days. It's rescheduled for later this year, like November or something, 2022. Touch wood, he's in good health this year and nothing else happens. But I do kind of worry that I might not get to see him as well.
I think Elton will still be around. He's done a few gigs in Australia, which I managed to catch in kind of small venues.
Yeah.
But yeah, he always bounces back, I kind of feel. So I wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah, I've just listened to his recent autobiography as well, because I download the audio books always. So if anyone is an Elton John fan or just a music fan in general, or just a pop fan of the kind of 60s, 70s, 80s, and I highly recommend his autobiography. As you can imagine, with someone like Elton John, he doesn't really hold back, let's say. So he tells it like it is and like it was, from obviously what he can remember from his years and years of alcohol and cocaine binges. But it's a very good read or listen. And if you listen to it, it's narrated by, he does the first part and the last part, and then the rest is what's the guy's name that played him in the movie? Taron Egerton.
That's it. Yeah, the Kingsman dude, right?
Yes. So yeah, he narrates the rest of it, and he does a really good job as well. So again, if you're a fan of him, then check that book out. It's definitely worth a listen or a read.
Sure, good tip.
All right. Anything else from yourself that you want to chat about?
Oh no, just thank you very much for having me on the podcast today. It's definitely been a long time coming in terms of kind of getting in and amongst the I guess like the subculture that you're a part of, and I love what you do. So keep doing what you're doing. I think it's awesome. And I guess a final plug, which is head over to my Instagram page. It's N.E.R.D.live. So yeah, over the months and hopefully years, I'll be posting a lot of unreleased footage that I have. And if anybody has anything cool that they want to share with me as well, that they want to post on the page as well, then definitely feel free to send me a note in the DMs, and I'll be happy to post anything that's maybe of interest to the community.
Nice one. I definitely and highly recommend the Instagram page if you are of our age and you've been to these shows and you can relive some of those memories. If you're a little bit younger, which most people seem to be these days, then you can live it vicariously through us for the first time and check out those videos. A few bits from me. I always forget to plug these other things. Obviously, there's the usual stuff. Head over to the Otherz with a Z.net to stream the podcast there, get all the show notes and latest information. You can find us at Otherz Podcast online. But also go check out the BBC ICECREAM Facebook page that I look after. What I probably should have done is prepared for this and had the URL ready, but I can't even remember what it is. Hold on 1 second. So it is the usual facebook.com, and go to BBC ICECREAM Worldwide for non-official BBC ICECREAM stuff. So some of the latest news, people's latest pickups, stuff for sale, legit checks, all that stuff. Head over to there. And also somebody recently asked me if there was a subreddit for the podcast and for N.E.R.D. There is a Pharrell one. There's a couple of Pharrell ones, in fact, but there was no N.E.R.D one. So I have gone and set up an N.E.R.D one. So if you are a Reddit user, head over to there. The subreddit is called N.E.R.D Army, which is what N.E.R.D's handle used to be many years ago. So I've stolen that blatantly. But yes, it is an unofficial N.E.R.D subreddit. So you can go there, post N.E.R.D stuff, post Pharrell stuff, BBC stuff, whatever it might be. Anything that's related, you can stick it in there, basically. Then you can find me the usual places at Steve R. Penny. And there it is. You've got it on your screen. Lovely stuff. I'll put all the links to my stuff and to Punesh's stuff in the show notes. So yeah, make sure you head over there, subscribe, like, follow, all that jazz. And we will be back soon. You may be hearing this after a special episode, or the special episode may follow this. I'm not quite sure which way around it will go yet. But yeah, we're going to be doing this more and more regularly. Punesh, thanks for jumping on here. I know it's late for you over there as well. So I appreciate that, and you are more than welcome back any time as well.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's been an absolute blast, and I'm not feeling tired, so that's a good sign.
I feel your pain. Like I was saying to you earlier, it's normally the other way around for me. I'm normally the one up late recording these things, so I know what a pain in the backside it can be doing these late at night. But yeah, that's it from us for this week. We'll wrap it up there, and we will speak to you soon, everyone. Bye-bye.